Hi, I'm Marty, VK4 Kilo Charlie from Mad Dog Coils, and this is another instructional video for you. With the Mad Dog Coils, whether it's the 40 or the 80 version, you either order the metric or the imperial. And sometimes when people get their coil, they've ordered the wrong one. They think they might have a metric whip and it ends up being perhaps a 3/8 24 thread, an imperial thread. So this video is an instructional video on how to change out the bolt at the top of the Mad Dog coil. Now you'll notice that on the Mad Dog coils there are some warning labels here saying do not unscrew the end cap, do not loosen the nut, and that's for good reason, because the windings of the coil go back through the former and get connected underneath this bolt. And if you start moving the end cap around, then you could possibly loosen the tension on the coil, and it could spring out and slowly unwind a little bit the coil. And so there is good reason to keep that tight and not to muck around with it. But for the purpose of changing the bolt at the top from an imperial to metric or metric to imperial, there is a proper process to do that, and that's what I'm going to show you today. So what I'm going to do is I've got a coil here that has a metric thread on the top. So this is an M10 bolt, and we're going to change that to an imperial bolt. But the process would be the same if you had an imperial and we're changing to a metric. So we'll go through that process. Okay, the first thing to do is I'm going to get a couple of nuts, and these are M10 nuts, and I'm going to thread these on, not quite all the way down, maybe half a turn or a turn back. And then the second nut is just enough to grip on. It doesn't quite go all the way around the bolt, but probably about 2/3 of it is on that second nut. So you can see that that is loose from the bottom nut by about a turn. So I get a couple of shifting spanners. And what I'm going to do is lock these two nuts into each other, the two that I just put on, so they're nice and tight. Leave this spanner on the middle nut and put the spanner on the lower nut. And I'm going to undo that lower nut, which is now undone. Then I'm going to undo these two, which I locked against each other. So now all three nuts can come off. Okay, they're all off. Once they're off, we can then take the end cap off. Sometimes, this one's not too bad. So if it's really tight, you might have to get some sort of vise to undo it. This one wasn't on too bad, so I'm able to undo that one with my hand. And the end cap comes off. And now this is the assembly inside. There's a washer. Now what I can do is I can pull this over like that. And you can see that the winding of the coil comes up from the inside of the threaded riser, and it's looped, and the bolt goes through the loop of the coil. There's a washer and a nut. So I'm now going to undo this back to my trusty leg vise. So this is taking off all the M10 hardware, the metric hardware. Now you'll notice that this one, got that washer there. I don't have a washer on this side though, because the head of the bolt is actually quite large. But you'll find that when I put the imperial one on, I will be putting a washer there because the head of the imperial bolt is a lot smaller. So that's that. So the metric is off. Now let's put back on the imperial. So this is the imperial bolt. it's probably around about 1.25 inches, at least about about 1.25 inches on the thread, so 1.5 inches on the full. And this one's an Allen key, but it doesn't have to be if you've got an actual hex head or something like that. So I'm going to put a washer there just so I get good coverage. Another washer. Okay, we'll do that bolt up. Okay, that's done up quite tight. Okay, just going to just keep the video there. I'll just duck off and get something here. Just some pliers. So I'm going to just bend that back and push that in. So the idea here is I want that bolt to be centered and as straight as possible when I look down through the threaded riser. So nice and straight that way and that way. So it's pretty central. Okay, that's good. Now if the bolt is up a little bit high when I screw the end cap on, that's not too bad. I'm going to push it down a little bit. Okay, very nice. So that's, I'm happy with that. Then another washer goes on there. Okay, back to the leg vise. Actually, I'll just put the cap on first. Okay, that's pretty tight. Okay, nice, fairly central to the other cap. That's good. Happy with that. Now we've got to put all the nuts on at the top. So we got the nut that will go on and will stay on. Now the reason that I only do this one up finger tight, because if I start putting a spanner on that and tightening up, it's going to spin the bolt around and cause perhaps the loosening of the winding. And so a good thing to do, keep the camera there for a minute. I'm just going to get a little paint pen. And I'm going to put a dot just there on the top so I can keep an eye on whether this threaded nut or bolt is going to turn. Okay, so that's on finger tight. I'm now going to put my 3/8 other nuts on, and these are just temporary, just to lock the bolt in place. And again, this one's only going to be about a turn distance from the bottom one, and then this one goes on. I'm going to lock those two together. My trusty leg vise. They're locked. Okay, keeping this one on the middle one, move the top one down to the bottom. I'm going to do up the bottom one, but I'm keeping an eye on my yellow dot in there to make sure that that does not move in reference to the coil. So I'm tightening it up and putting some pressure on both just to make sure that it doesn't move. So that's quite tight. Undo the locking nuts. And there we go. We made the imperial from the metric. So that's the process in doing that. And as I said, if you've got an imperial and you want to convert it to a metric, you would follow the same process, but just use the other hardware to suit. Hope that helps some of you. I'm Marty, VK4KC. Thanks for watching.